I'm Thomas, today's host for this episode, and we're going to be talking with a local urban grower about the importance of food safety. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn more about how to prep your produce for consumers. So in the hot seat today, we have Ava Post from Watts's very own MudTown Farm. Ava is a professional horticulturalist and environmental advocate with over 14 years of experience managing and creating nonprofit gardens. She's currently the interim director of Green Initiative at Watts Labor Community Action Community, which includes MudTown Farm. She's also an instructor at UCLA, holds a BS in plant science from Cornell University, and is our local specialist on farm food safety. Welcome, Ava.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and be a part of this library episode. So, yeah, I'm very excited to be here and talk about the fun stuff, food safety.
Right? I'm happy to be chatting with you. So I'm thinking we can start with an easy one, which is just tell me a little bit about your farm. Tell me about Mudtown.
Yeah, so MudTown Farms is a 2.5 acre urban farm park in the heart of Watts in Los Angeles. We're a nonprofit organization under Watts Labor Community Action Committee. So we're a program that is aimed at creating beautiful green space, increasing food access, and basically having a really nice spot for residents of Watts who are typically underserved in urban communities to have access to green space and healthy produce.
That's a lovely space. I feel like it's a breath of fresh air every time I go and visit. So um,
Thank you.
just driving straight into the topic, what is a food safety plan and what might a food safety plan look like for an urban farm?
Okay, so right into it.
Right?
Well, basically, a food safety plan is a unique set of documents that describes and identifies potential risks and actions to address those risks. So, this could be something that is defining your practices, your policies, and your standard operating procedures as a farm that is prioritizing risk reduction. And by risk reduction is mainly, not poisoning people with your produce. So making a food safety plan and your standard operating procedures helps to prepare you for answering buyer questions and buyer requirements, third-party audits, and meeting food safety regulations.
All important things, you could say.
Yes, pretty important things.
Yeah. How might the requirements differ for an urban farm versus a large scale operation?
So pretty much the way that the Food Safety Modernization Act, there's a produce safety rule. Um, a written plan is not officially required under these regulations, but it is required by a lot of buyers. For example, if you want to become a certified producer and sell at California farmers markets, you do have to have a written plan to get your certified producer's certificate. Um, and it's also a best practice to do it. And so pretty much like if you're under $25,000 in sales annually as an urban grower, you're kind of like exempt from the rule because you're too small, pretty much. But once you start getting over 25,000 in annual sales, that's when you really should be complying with the regulations and having this food safety plan. So I would say, and also as like your farm is increasing in size, you're also increasing the amount of risk that can potentially happen at the farm due to, more employees, larger area, different kinds of water sources, and I'm pretty sure we'll get into that.
So essentially, there are some exemptions for smaller urban farms, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so once you're starting out, as long if you're like under a certain threshold of income and revenue generation, then I'm not saying that you shouldn't be thinking about these things, but
Mhm.
it just might not apply to you immediately.
Sounds good. I mean, with that, getting into production, so walk us through what it's like when your hands are in the ground. How
Hmm.
does compost, how do pesticides and water management practices factor into your food safety plan, or how should they factor into the food safety plan of other urban farms?
Right. So I would say, as far as like the food safety plan goes, you really need to be thinking about what is like the flow of your operations and what are all the potential sources of contamination that can, I guess, become a part of the stream, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for us, when we're thinking about from the seed to when it is packed and goes to consumers, I hate calling people consumers, but the people who are going to be eating the produce at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day. So, it starts with, what are you growing and how are you applying amendments? So, for example, compost needs to be fully composted. If you're going to be using raw manure, um, that has to be composted for 120 days before you put it into the soil where you're having like active growing happening. So, you need to be aware of I guess, exactly what kind of amendments you're putting into the ground, because manure obviously contains E. coli, which is, stuff that is one of the more common foodborne illnesses that people get from being exposed to, I'll say, like contaminated produce. And that's how it does get contaminated, right? Is through these different inputs. Um, and so you want to be understanding what exactly you're applying to your fields. There's also distinctions between when we're talking about water, between pre-harvest and post-harvest water. So you can have, there's a little bit more leeway on pre-harvest water, so like the agricultural water that you're using to water your plants. I would say for urban farms, we're mostly using city water. So this water is already treated for E. coli and other pathogens, and generally is potable water that you can drink. So this kind of water has much less risk than if you're a larger scale or a more rural farm that's using groundwater or even surface water. And surface water is just water that's like lakes or ponds, just water that's exposed to the air, right? And that has a lot more chances for like an animal to go to the bathroom in it and contaminate that water source with different kinds of bacterias and pathogens. So generally, for urban farms, we're using city water, which can be is definitely more expensive, but is a lot safer. So depending on where you are, water safety is more or less of a concern depending on your water source. And post-harvest water is the water that's used to clean the produce, right? And so post-harvest water really does need to be uh, tested and clean. And by clean, I mean is free of E. coli. Because obviously, if you're washing your produce, you don't want to be spraying it or cleaning your produce with E. coli contaminated water. But generally, again, potable public city water doesn't have E. coli in it because the water utility is treating that water before it even gets into the tap. So if you're an urban farm, what you can do is have a copy of the current certificate of compliance from your utility company, and that suffices as far as having your water tested, right? Other food safety purposes is really training your employees. I think that's one of the most important parts, and I should have said that first, but making sure that your employees are washing their hands before they go, after they go to the bathroom, before they touch any produce, um, because that is probably one of the larger sources as well of food contamination. And so, we have like leafy greens and sprouts being almost 50% of all food contamination from these kinds of pathogens. And that's because, we're eating this stuff raw, right? And so when you're having raw produce that has like a higher risk of illness, uh, due to like the way that people are consuming it. So you really want to be aware of like what you're growing, what's the end use of that produce, and making sure that you're having um, basically the least amount of ways for your produce to get contaminated, whether it's through your water, the soil amendments that you're using, and also your workers and volunteers that are on the farm to kind of try to minimize that risk as much as possible.
Got it. I feel like you definitely got into this next section a little bit, discussing water.
Hmm.
But looking into the harvesting process, what does it look like when it comes to tools? When you're thinking about sanitizing throughout the process, can you give us a little bit of insight into, essentially what does food safety look like when it comes to the tools you use?
So when it comes down to the tools that we use, before we go and harvest anything, we make sure that our tools are all cleaned, so there's not any dirt or, chunks of stuff on them.
Hmm.
Um, and then what we'll do is we'll either use we have like a little spray bottle of like isopropyl alcohol, and you can spray that on your tools. That'll sanitize it, and you wipe it off, make sure things are clean. Um, and also, we don't think of them as tools usually, but the bins that you're putting your produce into that you're harvesting from also needs to be sanitized. And so for that, you can do a bleach dunk, right, or soak in a 10% bleach solution, but it's a 10% concentration of bleach. And so pretty much you can spray that on your tools as well if it can withstand it.
Uh-huh.
And also your harvest bins. So those harvest bins need to be sanitized as well before the produce touches it. You should also keep those bins separate from any other kinds of uses on the farm. So those bins that you're harvesting in, you should not be putting compost in it. You shouldn't be using it to carry other stuff around the farm. You should have separate bins for when you're harvesting produce from the field to the produce that's already washed, right? And so what can really help is having like different colored bins, different shapes and sizes for each use, and then or label and or labeling them for their particular use case. And that helps for your workers and your volunteers to also differentiate between those bins.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to workers and volunteers, that kind of makes me think about standardization of the food
Yes.
safety plan.
Hmm.
And, I'm just curious about how you guys start setting up those standard operating procedures and make sure everybody, who's on the farm, whether it be volunteer or staff, is adhering to a standardized food safety plan.
Yeah. So when it comes to like our staff and volunteers, we really want to make sure that everybody's on the same page as far as where things go. Because I think that we've talked about this a little bit and it can all seem kind of complicated. Be like, yeah, there's a specific bin here. You can't do this. Um, but so there is actually a really good training video that we have all of our staff and if we have volunteers that are actually coming into contact during this harvesting process, they'll watch this video and I've linked it as well so you guys can check it out. You can
It'll be
share
linked
it.
in the show notes.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can you
yeah.
can link it in the show notes and this is a great training video from the Produce Safety Alliance. It's 20 minutes and it kind of goes through everything as far as like worker uh, safety and sanitization and how are you going to be behaving on the farm pretty much. Most of it is like washing your hands, just wash your hands all the time and that's easily 50% of it, and also having like those written plans in an area that's accessible for people to look at. Generally for us at the farm we don't have a lot of volunteers doing this, mostly because we've kind of cut down on a lot of volunteers at the farm just due to like, you know, things getting damaged. So we do have a training now that we've been doing for our volunteers where they kind of go through all of the different practices, and it's really more intense than, just like, oh, I'm gonna go volunteer at the farm. So now most of the volunteers are doing things that are not specifically coming into contact with the edible produce that people are going to be eating down the road, or it's very early in the process where the risk is reduced entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd hate to use this word, but consumers,
Hmm.
you don't want to get your consumers sick. Like that's the worst case scenario.
Right.
And so how do you prepare for an instance like that? Essentially, how does like a diligent food safety plan ensure that you guys can trace anything and correct
Hmm.
when things have gone wrong?
Yeah. So this is really, really important when it comes to larger scale farms. For us, we track the dates, and the type and the field that the produce that we're harvesting is coming from. But on a larger operation, and especially if you're doing like a certified producer and selling at a farmer's market, lot numbers come into play. And so those are kind of standardized numbers that are identifying the harvest date, the location that that produce was harvested from, and that helps to identify the plants and any potential sources. So, like, let's say you're a really larger scale production and you need to know which field that might have been contaminated, right? And so those kind of lot numbers really help for producers to understand, okay, well, there was a contamination at this place. Now we can address that situation and going through whatever remediation plan you would need to address what happened. Basically, it's
Um,
making your produce traceable.
I mean, sounds like traceability isn't a huge issue for MudTown given your size, but I'm
Yeah.
curious, what issues have you guys run into when it comes to food safety, and how have you essentially corrected and prepared for those?
So we took a lot of food safety training courses. And I think for us, one of the bigger things was getting really diligent about having like a sanitization plan, separating all the containers, and making sure that those things are clearly labeled, easy for our interns and our farm staff to differentiate between from. Another challenge for us is that we want to have like a better wash station. So we're working on making a plan for a larger wash station because right now we kind of have just like, one small sink and it's definitely not enough. It's a big bottleneck for us. I would say would be the main issues that we've come across so far.
I mean, and I know like a big part of produce safety as well is record keeping and making sure
Hmm.
that you keep track of everything.
Yeah.
And so, with your guys' own records, what does that look like? How long do you keep them?
So actually, we were referred to Aaron Tormenson from Partnership for Growth LA, from LA Food Policy Council, and he was really amazing in helping us to prepare a way to like track all this information. He sent us this spreadsheet, a food safety plan template. And all of these things are recorded in this spreadsheet where we have logs and there's the date column in there and the activity, which is all coded. And it goes from everything from, when's the bathroom last cleaned? When was the cooler cleaned?
Mhm.
Anytime someone gets injured, general cleaning, whenever you see a pest in the farm. Like, so is there, an insect issue? Is there like mold somewhere? Anytime you apply fertilizer, and then the list goes on, right? So pretty much almost everything that happens on the farm can be tracked in this spreadsheet, and that helps to, keep everything organized and logged on like what is happening on the farm. I don't think that this is particularly necessary for everybody, but it is a really helpful tool.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you guys have a lot to track, but you guys probably don't go on through a lot of changes. But still, I'm curious about how often you do a review of your guys' overall food safety strategy,
Hmm.
and how often do you guys update it?
We're updating ours a lot this year, mostly because we're working on making a strategy that works for us. And so I think that at the beginning of your food safety plan, you're going to be revising it a lot more. Your food safety strategy really should be updated or at least reviewed annually. But I think that when you're first developing it, you're going to be changing it pretty often. You're going to be figuring out new things that work for you, that don't work for you. And as you change your operations on the farm, you should be updating that food safety plan as well. So, like if you're making a change in how you're doing something, just add that to the plan, edit it to reflect the changes that you've made.
Got it. So pretty much annually or biannually is how much folks should be reviewing it. But now I want to
Yeah.
get into kind of a scary topic, which is
Hmm.
costs. So from anything from building a wash station to permitting, I'm assuming has some sort of a hidden fee or price tag attached. So what sort of costs and hidden fees have you guys run into when developing your farm food safety strategy?
Hmm. I think the biggest one for us has been time. And so we don't think of time as a cost, but it really is a cost. And it's a lot of like administrative time that goes into developing the food safety plan and having your staff understand it. Because staff is expensive, right? And our time is expensive. And so going through and having someone who's in a supervisorial position at the farm or your farm manager, owner, whoever, their time is going to be going into creating this food safety plan and that can take quite a while to wrap your head around everything, take the trainings, dedicate the time that it takes to really make a good one. So I would say don't underestimate the time required. Uh, and what that staff time is going to look like. As far as like hard costs and equipment, I think that getting all the bins together and the wash station equipment can get expensive depending on the type of model that you're going through. So, I think you can always start small too, right? And then use the things that you can start with. And if it doesn't work, then you can upgrade it. If you end up not even using it, then you didn't spend a ton of money on it. So I think, going small and not overextending yourself is probably a good plan because you might be investing into things that aren't providing as much return as you think they might. So I would say, just start implementing a food safety plan, see where, okay, well, maybe I need a different table to wash your lettuce or produce or whatever you're washing, right? And it's not working for you. I would say just try something cheap and then, if you need to improve it, then you're seeing where are those problems that you're having and getting a better solution for those, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, that pretty much concludes all the questions that I have for today's episode. But I'm curious if you have any, final advice for growers just starting out and beginning to develop their own food safety plan.
I do. I've got a lot of advice and
Yeah.
resources actually. So, you can take the produce safety grower trainings. They're only $10 for California residents, and you get your certificate, right? Your Produce Safety Alliance certificate. It's 2 8-hour days. And it goes over the produce safety requirements in California. You get this giant book. Oh, oh, my camera doesn't want to pick it up. But yeah,
It's a big book.
it's a big book, okay? And it's super helpful. I've included links as well to sign up. So yeah, it's like $10 for California residents. I think it's about 150 if you're out of state. Um, there's also you can download the book on Cornell's Cal's website. I think I've included a link there too. So you can probably download it as an electronic version. But in California, get the $10, do the $10 training. It's totally worth it. You get your certificate at the end of the 8 hours, and it goes over a lot of really great information. There's also the monthly Zoom, University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources produce safety webinars. So I've got a link for that as well. These monthly webinars on produce safety, where they invite different speakers to talk for about an hour and a half on different food safety topics. So you can always just, look at those as well if you're more interested in dialing in your food safety or listening about an expert talk about something. And I don't know if this is still available or not, but we at MudTown also did go through the Urban Ag at the Market training through Occidental College, and that was really great, like in person and online course that's focused on getting urban farms ready to sell at farmers markets in California. And aimed at helping urban farmers getting their certified producer certificate. And that allows farmers to sell at certified farmers markets. And so certified farmers markets are something that, require a certified producer certificate to be able to sell at those markets. And that involves getting like an inspector coming to your farm, and they will like walk around and look at everything that's in the ground and say, okay, well, you've got, 200 pounds of tomatoes estimated that you're going to have at the end of the growing season. And that's what you're like licensed to sell. And so you do have to keep getting an inspector to come, maybe like twice a year, depending on how often you're changing your crops. But basically, that is really intended to make sure that the growers are actually growing the produce at their farms when they sell at the markets. So we didn't end up actually getting our certified producer certificate because we don't sell at farmers markets at our farm. So, but it is still a really good resource to if you are an urban farmer and looking to sell at farmers markets.
So yeah, no, there's a long
Yeah.
list, and I think folks will be able to really go through it and find, ways to develop a food safety plan unique and specific to their own operation. So thanks for the
Yeah.
conversation today, Eva.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and the food safety plans is going to be unique for each operation too. So don't get overwhelmed, just start. Um, and you'll get there eventually. That's what I gotta say.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks so much, and see you guys in the next one.
All right, thanks for having me.